China launched a live-fire drill on its side of the Gulf of Tonkin lasting 4 days, just days after Vietnam announced a new baseline to mark what it sees as its territory under UN law. Tucked up in the northwestern corner of the South China Sea, the Gulf of Tonkin lies between Vietnam and the militarized Chinese island of Hainan. As China continues to grow aggressive in its pursuit of its South China Sea claims, what does it mean for its smaller neighbours? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Ian Kavat. Joining us today are Chyungly Lee, National Chengchi University Institute of International Relations Professor and Research Fellow, and Liou To-hai, National Chengchi University College of International Affairs Adjunct Distinguished Professor. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show today. Vietnam signed an agreement for the Gulf of Tonkin in late 2000, setting up a maritime management and dispute resolution framework. However, in March 2024, Beijing unilaterally announced a new baseline for the Gulf of Tonkin deemed, quote, excessive by Western analysts, represented by the red line that you can see here in this map. Now, a year later, on February 21st, Vietnam released its own territorial baseline, linking 14 coastal points extending from Quang Ninh Province to Quang Tri Province. Following this move, China launched fire drills from February 24th to the 27th in Beibu Gulf area, closer to the Chinese side. Details of the exercises so far have been few. However, China's August 2023 live fire drills included live artillery and rocket fire, anti-ship, anti-submarine and surface-to-air missile exercises. Professor Lee, let me come to you first. So what was China sending a message to Vietnam? And if so, what was that message?
Of course, whenever there is a live fire exercise, we can see some message there. But, you know, in general, they wanted to flexing the muscle, of course, and the second wanted to show the force. But more importantly is this is the response to Vietnam's response to China's demilitarization, right? So, I mean, baseline territorial sea. So it's a warning to Vietnam, of course, and deter the further actions taken by Vietnam. Yes.
Professor Liu, if it's a message to Vietnam, Vietnam hasn't publicly responded. How do you think that message was received, and will it alter their behaviour, their actions?
I think both sides has tried to play a low profile to each other, even though Chinese tested the live fire drills. But you know, two of them are communist states, so they normally they through these communist comrades channels to solve their problems. And most important, of course, both sides need each other. You know, Vietnam, yes, is rising in a big way, but Vietnam actually relied on China a lot because Vietnam is the biggest beneficiary of the Sino-US trade war, because lots of these production lines shifting from China to Vietnam. So Vietnam has already emerged the biggest production hub in the region. The second example is Vietnam's exports to the United States. So last year, $120 billion US dollars. And then Vietnam enjoyed a trade surplus with United States of $3 billion US dollars. On the other hand, Vietnam suffered 82 billion, 8.8 billion deficit to China. And China's and Vietnam's trade totaled more than 200 billion US dollars. So you see, obviously, Vietnam imported the Chinese intermediate goods and assembly the final products in Vietnam and export to the United States.
Right. It's the back door into the US market.
Yeah, but now it's facing the biggest challenge, Donald Trump. So that is why both sides has tried to play down their dispute because they don't know how Donald Trump is going to deal with Vietnam or how to deal. Obviously, is going to treat China toughly, but Vietnam is very important for both China and the United States.
Okay, Professor Lee. So let's get down to a little bit more detail of the two baselines. We showed the Chinese one, which, as I said, analysts have said that the baseline appeared to be excessive. Can you compare that with the Vietnamese baseline?
Okay, so you also have the Vietnamese baseline showing, right? So I think what we see on China side, according to UNCLOS, there are some specific requirement on this so-called of straight baseline. Although both sides say that they are doing this as on the basics of straight baseline, that means you connect up points and with another points with the straight line, right? The question is the point, where the point started, and we see the China one, they have extended to the coastline like 50 nautical miles. So it's far away from the coastline. So compared to Vietnam, it's just along with the coastline. So basically on UNCLOS, you can have this straight baseline under the circumstances of such you have region of islands, and also you have indentation of islands, I mean the Gulf. So that's the way to draw the straight line, rather than you select a point in the middle of the water and then say we will draw a straight line over there. That's one thing. Another thing is that each segment of the straight line there cannot over 24 miles. And for China this time, they have something like extended to almost 60 miles. So that's way more than what UNCLOS allowed.
Okay, so Professor Liu, do you agree with that? It seems that China has not been following UNCLOS laws, whereas Vietnam, with its 14 points, the straight lines from point to point, 14 of them, appears to be doing it.
I think they are focusing different parts of the UN Convention law of sea. So that is why, and I also, as I just mentioned previously, they are not going to really fight with each other because it's not in their national interests at this moment, at least. So that is why I think, yes, Chinese show the teeth, but Vietnam has tried to respond in a slower pace. Why? It's relevant to Vietnam's rely heavily on China in terms of trade. And another important thing we need to know is Vietnam just changed the top leader. To Lam just become the Vietnam's top leader last year. The reason why he had to say something, because he just took over the power, and he has to show Vietnamese people he pay attention to the sovereignty. But more important than that, according to our researchers, they believe To Lam has a very ambitious plan. He wants to make Vietnam what's so-called economic rejuvenation. So that want make Vietnam a big power. And they continue to follow his predecessor's policy of bamboo diplomacy. He came to the power and immediately went to Beijing and told, China is the #1 ally, the most important country. Then next month went to the United States to sign the semiconductor agreement, to see the Biden, met Biden. So see, that is why he is, I think he's very concerned about a relationship with China, at the same time want to maintain a positive relationship with the United States.
So the reason, you're saying the reason now as to why Vietnam was responding to China's baseline is because of To Lam needing to make a stand on that.
Yeah, because he just came to power.
Right.
Yeah, he could not ignore what happened from the Chinese side.
Okay. Now, earlier on February 19th, China's foreign ministry renewed its criticism of Vietnam's land reclamation efforts on Bark Canada Reef in the Spratly Islands. It had previously complained about this particular reef in 2019. China's Ministry of Natural Resources claims that from 2022 to 2024, the land area of Bark Canada Reef has expanded tenfold. Additionally, it says Vietnam has dredged a channel almost 300 meters wide, which can accommodate warships. Professor Lee, so Vietnam has engaged in this sort of activity, I believe, since the late or since the 2010s. However, do you think that the Bark Canada Reef marks any shift in Vietnam's strategy?
I think it's the continuation, but just enhance the efforts a little bit more here, because we know that Barkinata Reef is the largest future Vietnam hold in Spratly Island, and now they have the runway, and they also kind of create some platforms for military. Housing the military equipment over there. So that give kind of open another page for Vietnam to have these options for taking off and landing the aircraft there. So of course get some strategic benefits, and sometimes we call this as a strategic defense.
Right.
So also this is also learned from the experience from Scarborough Shoal. Experience with Philippines and China, right? So Philippines lost the island at that time, but this is kind of try to build something there, infrastructure structure layer, and then kind of deny China's accessibility to the area there. Yeah,
right,
so.
I see. And so, Professor Liu, because before we could say that Vietnam has said that its approach is not to militarize the islands. It obviously agrees that it is building out artificial islands, but it's also always maintained they weren't for military purposes. So is this reef a little bit different?
Yeah, I think it's still relevant to military operation in the future. But at this moment, it's still working on building the artificial islands. Actually, from Chinese side, they had complained several times. They said it was Vietnam who started to build these artificial islands. That's why we have to do in order to respond to what Vietnam did. So that is why this action-reaction. That's also why China this time conducted this live fire.
But we're not saying that we agree with China's narrative, though, are we?
I said both sides tried to do something continued, but also at the same time they negotiate with each other and try to show the world they are still good friends. But in reality, when it comes to sovereignty, neither side can make any concessions. In particular, as just mentioned about Thailand, this is also for him to show the Vietnamese nationalism in order to get more support inside Vietnam. This is very important.
For every leader, yes. Professor Lee, so how do you interpret China's unusually public criticism? I mean, it doesn't do it often, of Hanoi, given that it is guilty of reclaiming actually twice as much, never mind who was first, perhaps, but in terms of area, twice as much land as Vietnam in the South China Sea?
I think public criticism is just one thing there, because we see further move there. They have the live fire exercise there, so step by step. So I think China really cares, and they know that they see the intention of Vietnam here, just like what Professor Liu said, that the new leader do have the ambitions to become a bigger country or a powerful, more powerful country here. So China has to think about something to kind of show their disagreement or protest against the rising of another country there.
Right. And what do you think, Professor Liu, of how it made that show? Because it could have simply just done it, in private. It's the kind of thing, the kind of communication that Beijing itself prefers. The fact that it did it so publicly, as in the live fire drills, and then publicly complaining about Vietnam, how does that reflect on China's own reputation, do you think?
Actually, China is not really afraid of Vietnam. China has all kinds of cards against Vietnam. Already China has imposed these kind of threats to Vietnam in a big way, even though we talk about cooperation.
So what was the point of making it so public? Bring it into the public realm? Because,
of course, Chinese do not want to see already Philippines is challenging China. Vietnam has already been quiet for a long time. 2009, it was Vietnam who started talking about China, claim South China Sea is China's core national interest, and then started fighting. At that time, Vietnam was the vanguard against China, but now it's Philippines. And so that is why China does not want to see both countries again working together against China. Okay, so that is why China, as I said, China has used Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand, at least 3 cars in order to isolate Vietnam. In particular, high-speed railway.
Which we're going to get onto now.
China already completed its high-speed railway to Laos, and then just recently, Thai Prime Minister went to China, and before that, the cabinet already passed to build the second phase of the Sino-Thai high-speed railway. This is very important because the second phase is going to link to Thai's capital, Bangkok. Then Bangkok can link to Malaysia and Singapore. Then almost done the Pan-Asia railway network.
Right, and so this is
the other side.
Yeah, this is the missing link, which we'll get onto.
Yeah.
A very good introduction, thank you. Vietnam's National Assembly recently approved the construction of a 390-kilometer cross-border railway from its largest northern port city to the border with China through capital city Hanoi. The new rail line will run through key manufacturing hubs home to Samsung, Foxconn, Pegatron, many of which rely on components from China. Beijing will provide funding through loans for the $8 billion project. It is the first part of Vietnam's 2 corridors, 1 belt initiative, connecting to Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. Professor Lee, let me come to you. So how significant do you think is the change of heart by Vietnam? Traditionally, it was the missing link. It didn't want to be involved in these railways, Chinese ones.
I think because Vietnam also attend BRI summit. Okay, so he participated in One Belt, One Road, but not a real project yet. That's the thing. So symbolically, of course, Vietnam support, or at least not against China's One Belt, One Road there. And right before, several years ago, they have already reached agreement to have these 2 corridors and 1 belt economical rims there. So,
but they were sort of proposed 2003. You're right, it's been kicking around for a long time. MOU in 2017, but progress has been so slow.
Yes. So actually we see that South China Sea issue, of course, is one thing, right? So there is an anti-Chinese sentiment in the public of Vietnam there. And secondly, the quality of China's high-speed rail, they question about that or not trust, and also the labor forces, a lot of other things. So when China say wanted to invest something there, they just bring their own workers, right? We all know about that. Nothing to do with the Vietnamese economy there. And so Vietnam did play some cautious steps over there, not to just really involve there. But we know that recently Vietnam also signed their own high-speed rail from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh cities and emphasized on the self-funding. Okay, so actually they are seeking about this autonomy in economic terms as well. And this one, the one we mentioned about this Lao Jie to Haiphang Shi, this one also they are only ask for partial financial assistance or financial loans rather than foreign aids. So it's kind of different concept here. So I think Vietnam, they have their own strategy to pursue autonomy here. Okay, just as their South China Sea policy as well. They call East Sea. But so in the past they kind of focus more on marine economy. But now they moved after 2021. They moved to islands building strategy there. So that's why we see a lot of land filling and also infrastructure building over there. So I think Vietnam tried to be more proactive in a lot of sense, strategical proactively. So that's something we have to watch.
So I'm reading from you that what you're saying is you don't believe this will make Vietnam more dependent on China, because you say that there are loans?
China, yeah. So thinking about the question you just asked, why China has to publicly criticize what Vietnam did, right? So if they are seeking about autonomous here, then there's a great possibility that they will align with U.S. or other superpowers or other great powers as well. So that's something China doesn't want to see, right? So so taking the experience, what happened between the Philippines and China. So actually, China has been very relatively nice to Vietnam already. For instance, the live fire drills, they informed Hanoi, okay? And Hanoi also responds, say that they only conduct those drills in the Chinese domain, okay? So compared to what just happened in the Tasman Sea, right? And what happened to us, right? So it's kind of nice to Vietnam already. So, but you know, on the thing here, if Vietnam wanted to seek a strategic autonomy, that means they don't want to be dependent on either great powers. They are trying to do that. That's what I observed.
Okay,
yes.
So Professor Liu, your take on that, can it still remain strategically autonomous from China, or does this, create, the loans as well as the grants? Does this create any kind of, economic interdependency or dependency on China?
Yeah, of course, the economic interdependence is there because of the geographic proximity, unavoidable. And Vietnam needs to become, as I said, Vietnam top leader wants to make Vietnam re-emergent as leaders of the ASEAN economically. So in that case, that's inevitable. But we need to take a look at what happened between Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh high-speed railway. So far, it's going to beat China, of course, Korea, Japan, even European countries. They all try to beat this. So if China is able to get this high-speed railway project, in that case, China's influence will be dominating. Because you already talk about the Hanoi's two routes to Kunming and Nanning, in addition to Haiphong. So that is why this is very important. I think Vietnam wants to learn the high-speed railway technology from China through those two routes I just mentioned about, from Hanoi to Chinese cities. Then they perhaps to build their own high-speed railway from the, Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh, because they want to get this technology. Unless Chinese provide enough technology to them, they can build their own, or they could seek Japanese assistance, because Japanese used to got this speed a few years ago, but then later, because it involved the Vietnam domestic corruption and terminated.
Right. And Professor Lee, however, so the way it's been explained, one would think that Vietnam would definitely not want to have China in that, as you said, between the Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi, to give them absolute domination. But would that prove difficult in terms of having different systems to connect? Would it be easier, for example, to have it all Chinese sort of standards and technology?
To the whole thing, yes. I think those technical problems, they will tackle that. But what I want to emphasize here is the new leader, the new policy, the new strategy, the new standpoint they are going to start with, right? So that might change something we have to observe. I think in terms of the railway, okay, it's really interest-based calculation there, right? So the Vietnamese government will consider a lot of cost and benefits issues, of course, because when it deals with economic issues. But on the South China Sea issue or other sovereign issues, it's more rule-based state behaviors they are seeking. So that's different approach there. And as I often hear about the leaders from Beijing, they always say that their relations with Southeast Asia countries are not limited to South China Sea issues only. So in addition to that, they also continue other engagement and relations there. Yeah.
Okay. However, Professor Liu, do you think that China will be hoping that once Vietnam's constructed this 2 corridors, 1 belt, essentially integrating Vietnam into Beijing's Belt and Road initiative, that it will become more compliant, less vocal, less assertive in the South China Sea?
So that is why this high-speed railway is just one approach when it comes to China's, coping strategy toward Vietnam, seeking for independence or autonomous. Okay? So that is why we talk about this one, and then you can easily find out why, this Vietnam's 2 routes to China And the second phase of the Chinese Thailand high-speed railway, all claim to be completed by 2030. So obviously, two of them are competing. The two ASEAN countries are competing with each other. And the Chinese are using them and to play one against the other in order to reach its goal, to complete the Pan-Asia railway network that will be benefit to China, in particular when it comes to competing with the United States.
Right, yes, that great power rivalry. We're going to have to end it there. Thank you so much to my guests, Chyungly Lee and Liou To-hai, for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.